G'day, you mob. How's it going? Welcome to this episode of Aussie English, the number one place for anyone and everyone wanting to learn Australian English. Today is another Pete's 2 Cents episode where I'm going to be answering your questions from Instagram. So each week I'm trying to get on there again and I am trying to get your questions and then answer them, be consistent with this, and obviously create these podcast episodes too. Just remember, guys, for these Pete's 2 Cents episodes, if you are a premium podcast member, you can become a member at aussieenglish.com.au/podcast if you are not. But if you are a member already, there are no transcripts for these episodes, okay? That's how we get them published quickly, record them, put them up, and yeah, these are the only episodes that don't have transcripts, okay? So anyway, let's get into some of these questions. Okay. So this one comes from Kenna, who asks, what is a drongo? What is a drongo? So I believe, from memory, that the word drongo comes from a horse. Let me have a look quickly. I think it's a horse that always lost. What have we got here? In Australian slang, drongo is an insult, meaning a fool, an idiot, or someone who is generally inept or unsuccessful. So you're not good at something, you're bad at something, you're, a fool, an idiot. And yes, the term originated from a racehorse named Drongo, who despite having good bloodlines and close calls in races, so almost winning, almost doing well in races, never actually won a race. And this led to the term being applied to anyone who was considered a no-hoper, so someone who had no hope, or a mug. A loser, an idiot. So it's from the 1920s in Australia. So it's a pretty cool phrase that you can use. It's informal, but it's kind of like you would use this endearingly. You would use it on someone that you like or love, someone in your family, friends, where you're trying to sort of be a bit cheeky, call them a no-hoper, a bit of a loser. Loser's a little stronger, or maybe a duffer, a dag, an idiot. So yeah, you can use this and like if I said something in front of my dad and he was just like, you drongo, it's kind of like he's laughing at me being silly. It's not him calling me a moron, a fool, an idiot in a very nasty way. And I think it's just that you would use stronger terms. My dad, he definitely calls me those things sometimes if I am being stupid or say something dumb. He might be like, you idiot. But he probably wouldn't call me a drongo in that sense. He would use something stronger, okay? You drongo. Kenna also asks, what is Straya or Straya mate? I don't know if you're asking me what is Straya and then saying mate at the end, or if you are asking me what is Straya mate. So Straya, Straya, is just an Aussie slang term for Australia, right? The country. He's from Straya. He's from Australia. And I guess the point is that it's talking about how we pronounce Australia as an Australian. Other countries, other dialects of English won't pronounce it the same way. We typically say it as like Straya. Oh, mate, I love being in Australia. Have you guys ever come to Australia? So it's just how you might hear it sometimes being pronounced by Aussies. And you just got to get used to it. Australia. All right, this one comes from Reza, who asks, how can I improve my English? Mate, that is a bit of an open-ended question. How can I improve my English? There are many things you can do, and it's really going to depend on your own personal issues, difficulties, problems with English as it currently stands. So, if we open this up and go out, broad scale, the main thing is to be thinking about what your weaknesses are, what you need to work on, what you need to improve, and focusing on those things first and foremost. If I were thinking about my private students at the moment, who I give a lot of private lessons to, obviously, each week, if they were to ask me these types of questions, or I was giving them feedback on how to improve, when I think broad scale-wise, the biggest thing is that they just need to study more, and they need to focus in on their biggest problems. What usually happens is that you guys get to a level of English where you're very good, you're able to communicate, you're fluent, you have that basic fluency, but you're still making lots of mistakes. You're still not as fluent as you would like to be. Perhaps you don't understand certain more difficult accents in English. You still have trouble, but it's kind of a gift and a curse where you're at that intermediate plateau It's a pro and a con. You've gotten to a point where you can communicate. You don't need the other person to understand your native language. You can speak enough in English to get your message across, to communicate. But as a result, you tend to rest on your laurels, we would say. That is an expression for, it's kind of like take things for granted, to not need to or not try to improve or do better because you're sort of like, this is good enough. I can get by. I can do what I want to do. I don't really need to improve. Or you get to a point where you're sort of like, maybe I just let it happen passively. So a lot of my students will come to me and we'll chat, and I'll be asking, what are you doing at the moment to try and improve? Are you doing anything active? Are you studying? Are you getting lessons? Are you completing a course? Are you watching a TV show and trying to learn from that TV show? And more often than not, the majority of the time, students will be like, I just watch, or I just listen, but I don't actually engage deeply with it. I don't try and study it. I don't try and actively practice what it is I'm learning. I'll just listen to a podcast in the background. I'll watch a TV show, but I won't actually sit down and try and study those things to learn new phrases, new words, new vocab, new slang, new grammar, and then try and apply it, if that makes sense. I won't try and actively think about what mistakes I'm making and then try and fix those mistakes. So I think that would be my advice. If you are trying to improve, you're at the intermediate plateau and you're sort of like, I can't get any better. I feel like I'm stuck. I feel like I'm spinning my wheels. I'm sort of bogged. I can't keep improving. The main thing is really trying to, one, think about where your weak spots are. What do you want to improve? What are you having trouble with? Is it listening comprehension? Is it grammar? Is it self-expression? Is it fluency? Is it pronunciation? What are your biggest weaknesses? What do you want to work on? And then it's having a plan for how you can work on those things and have goals that you can aim at, that you can practice every single day. And it doesn't mean you have to work for hours and hours and hours every single day trying to practice, pronunciation, grammar, English, whatever it is in English. It's just that you have some kind of a plan, you have some kind of goal that you're aimed at, you have some resources that you're studying with, and that you stay consistent and do a little bit every day. Could be 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, could be 3 hours. It depends on you and how much you can fit into your life, how much spare time you've got, how motivated you are, how disciplined you are. But the main thing is just doing a little bit every day to work on your current weaknesses so that you keep improving, right? And I guess an analogy would be if someone's trying to get better at running a marathon, they're not going to work on sprinting. They're not going to watch TV shows about marathons. They're not going to talk to people about marathons. They're going to have to do the proper training to try and get better at the task of running a marathon, if that makes sense. So hopefully that helps. My basic advice would be thinking about what your problems are, what you would like to improve on, and then trying to come up with a plan for how to do that with a daily routine where you study and you work towards those goals. Okay? And again, shameless plug, if you guys want private lessons, if you want help doing this, if you are stuck at the intermediate plateau, you don't know what to do now, and you want some feedback on what your weak spots are, you want to come up with a plan on how to fix those things, and you want private lessons with me, send me a message, send me an email. So you can email me at pete@aussieenglish.com.au. Ask me about my private lessons. You can also message me on Instagram or on Facebook. Ask me about them, and I will send you the details. And hopefully we can work together. All right, next questions. This one comes from Christina. She asks, do you recommend any Aussie TV shows, more recent ones? Okay, one that I just watched that I really enjoyed is called The Survivors, and this is filmed in Tasmania. And part of the reason I really like this show, besides it being written very well, is that the scenery and everything around the show is beautiful. I actually really liked it. It's filmed down in Sydney. You get to see a lot of nature. You get to see a lot of Hobart and those areas down there in Tasmania. You get to see the cliffs. You get to see the ocean. And I'm a sucker for TV shows that are set in a coastal town. A sucker for something means it's like your weak spot. You really enjoy that thing. I am a massive sucker for chocolate. I'm a massive sucker for romance, for comedy. It means I really like that thing. So I'm a massive sucker for TV shows that are set in coastal towns. I just like them. I don't know why. I just like them. So anyway, this series is written by the same person who wrote I guess it was a book originally called The Dry, and that had Eric Banner in it. That's a good movie as well. And it's that kind of murder mystery type thing, this guy returns to a town and old skeletons in the closet sort of come out and there's all these issues and then they end up finding, out about a murder or a death or something that's happened in the town, a whole bunch of stuff gets revealed. And The Survivors is written by the same person and it's the same sort of deal. It's a young woman's mysterious death dredges up the past in a sleepy seaside town where 3 young people lost their lives 15 years ago and tore the town apart. So you get to see all these interactions between the different people in the town and, how they've been affected by these deaths of young kids in the town. And then they sort of unravel as the series goes what, why, how, when, these deaths took place. So that's a really good one. And I believe if you want to stream it, it is on Netflix. Yep, it's on Netflix. So you can stream it and you can obviously use the subtitles and everything to study it. It's just, it was really good. I actually can't remember, did I binge this? I binged it in like 2 days. So I think I saw it come up in Netflix and I was like, I'll give it a whirl. I'll give it a try. I'll see what it's like. I watched the first episode and I was sucked in. Now, other Aussie TV shows. I'm trying to think, what else have I watched recently that was Australian? Let me have a look. Aussie TV shows. I'm just going to look on Google too so I can give you some suggestions. Even if I haven't seen them. What are some recent ones? Gosh, I'm so out of the loop with this stuff too. Okay, what do we got? So, Population 11. That was one that I started but didn't finish. There was another series called Territory that, again, I started but didn't finish. This is kind of like set in the Northern Territory and it's people who have like a large farm that they're trying to protect. It should be pretty good. I might go back and watch that actually. The Newsreader is meant to be very good. I haven't seen that, but I've heard about it. Another one called Bay of Fires. The second season of that has just come out and that's being advertised everywhere and is meant to be very, very good. We've got some other ones like Boy Swallows Universe and Black Snow. Both of those star, what's his name? Gosh, what was his name again? Travis Fimmel. So he is the guy who has been in a lot of... what was he in? He was in Vikings. He was Ragnar in Vikings. That's the Aussie actor. He's kind of become pretty famous in Hollywood recently. So I want to watch those two. There's another series as well called High Country, which is about policing up in the mountains in Victoria and New South Wales. That's meant to be pretty good. And Troppo, I started that but didn't finish it. That is about... I guess it's going Troppo. The idea of going Troppo is going crazy because you live in the tropics. And I think it's 2 like investigators up in Cairns, in the tropics, getting into stuff there, I guess, unveiling mysteries and all that sort of stuff. And then what else? The Tourist is meant to be a really good one too, where I think this guy wakes up in Australia with amnesia and then he has to sort of, he's on the side of the road with a, bash to his head or something and he can't remember who he is. And he has to try and work that out. And then lastly, Deadlock. I really enjoyed Deadlock. That's another one that's filmed down in Tasmania. And it's kind of like a police, small town crime show, but it's really humorous. It's kind of comedy. It's really good. So, yeah, I've mentioned a whole bunch here. But I tell you what, I can see all these on Google. And all I searched was Australian TV shows 2020s. Okay, so they should give you shows that have been released in the last 5 years that you'll enjoy. Okay, so let's keep going. Hoda asks, Pete, you said that your wife was going to the running race. I assume it happened on Sunday. No, so... Gosh, when is it? It's in September. She's going to some 5K run in Melbourne in September, and she's been training like crazy for that recently, getting up at very early hours, much to my lament. I'm not a morning person, but I have to keep getting up to support her so she can go out and run. And I think she started running 7 or 8 kilometers now, so she's been doing really well. I'm really proud of her. All right, what else? This one comes from Aurora. Do you think that Aussie teens are not speaking Aussie English? They don't say g'day anymore. Yeah, that's an interesting one to think about. I haven't, to be honest, once I got to my 30s, probably even my mid to late 20s, I didn't really spend much time around teenagers. So I don't really know what's going on. It is pretty funny how you kind of end up out of the loop. So you get to a certain age where your kids, if you have kids, aren't teenagers, and your friends aren't teenagers, and most of your relatives your age, or at least in your generation, aren't teenagers anymore, and so you don't really see them for for a certain amount of time. I assume probably a decade or more. So, gosh, I'm thinking, my niece is currently, I think she's turning 8 this year. So what's that? It's another 5 years until she's a teenager. So I'm probably not going to be in the loop for a while. But I imagine that language is changing, and it does that, I think what happens is every generation comes up and they want to sort of define themselves and find their own identity. And so they they listen to, and they get an understanding of what their parents are like, and they decide that they often want to do things differently and try out different words, different slang, different language. So it wouldn't surprise me if you told me that Aussie teenagers or the younger generations aren't using words or phrases like g'day anymore. I think I didn't really use it as a teenager anyway, to be honest. Like, thinking back, I probably never really used it. And then as I got older, I started using it a little bit more. I think too, you sort of embrace being Australian and wanting to feel a bit more Australian. So you might start using Australianisms a little more, some of that Aussie slang. But yeah, when I was a teenager, I don't really remember walking around and being like, g'day. I think it probably felt a little bit too cliche at the time. And then, yeah, when I became an older person, older man, older gentleman, I stopped caring and started using g'day all the time. All right. Someone here said, boss, send me an invitation letter so I can move there. Yeah, I don't know how that works, mate. I don't think I can help you with that one, unfortunately. This one comes from Hadars2. G'day, Pete. How can AI help me improve my Aussie pronunciation and accent, in your opinion? So this is an interesting one. I've been using AI so much recently to do loads of things because it's just such a useful tool, right? Like, I'm sure you guys are all well aware of this. Pronunciation-wise, though, like, I've been working with some of my students and trying to help them with their pronunciation, obviously. And although I try and get them to use AI for things like speaking fluency, writing, getting feedback on writing, getting explanations for grammar or definitions for certain words and phrases, it's really good for that sort of stuff. It isn't that good at the moment for giving feedback on your pronunciation. So, like, if I spoke to AI, I think it would have trouble working out what my accent was just by listening to me. And again, I'm not really deep down into the weeds with how it all works, but I think it probably just finds it very difficult to hear and pick up accents from audio. It can obviously, based on what it's trained on, it can use those accents. So, like, if you ask it to speak in a British accent, it tends to be okay-ish. It sort of can pass as a British accent, but I don't think it's been trained on enough Aussie English stuff that if I ask it to speak in an Australian English accent, that it can do it well. Usually it sounds like an American trying to pretend to be Australian. So yeah, it's an interesting one. And I've heard from my students trying to work with it and ask for feedback. Am I saying this word correctly in Australian English? It tends to say, yeah, you're doing great, when the person may be mispronouncing things still, like saying the R when they shouldn't be saying the R, or mispronouncing vowel sounds. So I don't think in that sense it can really help you as things currently stand, but AI is changing so quickly at the moment that who knows, maybe next week, next month, next year, it'll be the best thing ever for this type of thing. However, when it comes to pronunciation, what you could use it for is stuff that is non-specific to Australian pronunciation, very specifically. So you could use it for things like word stress, which words are being stressed in the sentence, for weak forms of words, which words are being weakened in the sentence, because this is stuff that is consistent across dialects. You're going to have stress, you're going to have weak forms. What else? Intonation is largely going to be the same. So when you listen to, ChatGPT speaking to you with an American accent or voice, the intonation over the top of the sentences that it says is pretty damn good. I think most people, if you just heard one phrase, you wouldn't know that it was AI or a real person. It does a very good job of those things. So I would use it for working on that kind of stuff. Consonant sounds tend to be pretty consistent as well from American English to Australian English. There are some differences, but if you're practicing plosive consonants like T, D sounds, P, K, B, G, all of those sounds, that's going to be pretty much the same across dialects, or at least across American English and Australian English. So you could use it for that. Like TH sound, F sound, V sound, B, yeah, all of those are going to be pretty consistent. The vowels are where it will be very different. And the connected speech is where there will be quite a few differences. And then besides that, you can use it for generating word lists, to work on. You could use it for generating sentences to practice, phrases, all that sort of stuff. So it can be helpful in that sense. But yes, at the moment, if you said, tell me a phrase and use an Australian accent and then give me feedback on my pronunciation, it's going to tell you something, but it's probably not going to be very accurate. So, yeah. All right, we got a few more here. What's the best and worst thing you like about being Australian? That's a hard one. It's one of those things, I don't know. It's not something I sit around thinking about very often. Let's see if I can think of a worse thing, because I'm a bit of a cynic at times. I'm cynical. I am a pessimist. So the worst thing about being Australian, I think it's probably the government, that we have. And it's not that it's Liberal or Labor or whatever, but our government, whichever government seems to get into power, it seems to have lost its vision for what Australia should be and should aim to be in the future. It's mainly just every single time we get a government in, it pretty much spends the entire time just trying to get re-elected. So it'll make all these promises. It'll say it's going to make all these changes. It's going to help all blah, 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 blah. And then really at the end of the day, they only do the bare minimum to make it look like they're actually trying to make a difference and that they're helping people, and then they get re-elected. Or, they lose and then they spend all their time complaining, kicking up a fuss, saying, oh my God, we need to change all these things. And then when they get into power, if they get into power again, or when they get into power again, they don't end up doing anything. And the perfect example of this is the cost of living and housing crisis, right? How much it costs to get a house. The government fucked that up years ago. John Howard, our Prime Minister in the late 90s, early 2000s, brought in negative gearing and the capital gains tax and effectively set up incentives for people to invest in housing in order to make money and grow their wealth instead of, say, in business or shares, or things that are productive. A house isn't productive. A house doesn't create stuff that the economy can sell or people can buy, people can use. It's not generating new things for us to use. It's just a house. You live in it, right? And so as a result, housing has just become more and more and more expensive. And it's like a house of cards now where if it falls down, we're all fucked. The economy's fucked if it falls down. But at the same time, if it doesn't fall down, people aren't going to be able to afford to buy houses, at least as we know them currently. We'll have to make some huge changes of what a house is. Maybe we'll have to turn them into tiny little flats or, large buildings full of apartments. And that will be the way that the next generation of people in Australia will be able to afford to buy a house. But yeah, that is the issue at the moment. And that is one of my frustrations. Even though I'm a homeowner now, as of the past few years, I still, am worried about my kids and my friends and my family and other people who don't currently own a house and what they're going to do to be able to buy a property to feel safe and secure and raise their own family and everything like that. So it irritates me to no end that our government is doing fuck all, excuse the language, they're doing nothing to really change it. And part of the problem is at the moment, the boomer generation, everyone that's like 60 years and older, have a lot of their wealth tied up in houses and in house investments and the housing market, so that if prices did decrease, their wealth would decrease and they would freak out. I know also a lot of politicians own multiple houses, and so they don't want to see their investment properties decrease in value either. So there's those sorts of issues where in reality the fixes are pretty simple, but it would piss off a lot of people and probably the majority of people in the country at the moment, hence why nothing is being done to actually bring prices down or make things more affordable in the long run. So yeah, that's probably the worst part about me being Australian at the moment, at least that I can think of, that comes to mind off the top of my head. Other people would give you other things, I'm sure, but that's one of the worst. And then best, I don't know. I like our attitude, I guess, our personalities as a country, our friendliness, our informality. The fact that we don't put ourselves on a pedestal and treat other people like they're below us, but we also resent people who put themselves on a pedestal and put us below them. I really like that about our country. There are negative sides to it. You can get into the tall poppy syndrome thing where, to some degree, Australians don't like when other Australians succeed because of this sort of phenomenon. So if someone does really, really well, the tall poppy thing is like it's the tallest flower, so it gets chopped down to match every other flower in the field. Australians have a reputation for doing that with others who succeed. They'll try and sort of drag them back down and remind them that they're like everyone else. So we have that to some degree, although I think it's overplayed quite a bit. And, it's talked about as if it's, Australians are constantly tearing everyone down. But I don't know. I haven't really experienced that the same way that it's talked about quite a bit. But yeah, I like the fact that we are very friendly and informal and typically respectful of women, respectful of other races, other people, other religions. Don't get me wrong, there's bigotry, there's sexism, there's racism, there's all sorts of issues that Australia has like anywhere else. But by and large, like, you could move next door to me and you could be a Muslim Turkish family and I would still want to say g'day, get to know you and be like, how's it going? And if you had Australian citizenship, you had a passport or whatever, even if you had an accent, you're a different religion, I would see and treat you as Australian. Whereas there are plenty of other countries in the world, I don't have to name them, I'm sure you guys know, that if I move there tomorrow, I'm never going to be considered one of them. I'm never going to be treated the same. I would probably experience significantly different treatment from other people from those countries, that how they would treat one another, right? So I like the fact that in Australia, that happens. And again, I know that in places there's racism, there's bigotry, there's sexism, that exists for sure. But by and large, I think you can move here and you can become as Australian as me tomorrow, effectively, and you get the same rights as me. There's no difference. You're one of us. As soon as you get your citizenship, you get a passport, boom, you are Aussie. You're one of us. Doesn't matter if you've got an accent. Doesn't matter if you speak English or not. You're still Aussie. You're one of us. You're part of the group, right? So I like that part about Australian culture and the way that things are here. And I think that's why we have so many migrants that come here. If it was a racist hellhole where all foreigners were treated awfully the moment they got here, I would imagine the word would get out quickly and people would stop migrating here, right? But that isn't the case, and not at all. Anyway, so yeah, hopefully that's a fun one, guys. Hopefully I answered some of these really cool questions. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you on Instagram next time and you can ask me some more questions and I'll add them to the list. But thank you for joining me, mate, and I'll see you next time. Tooroo.